Good morning, all. I am the Reverend Rob Moore, a member here at Horizon who just happens to be a minister as well. Today I am filling in for our senior minister, the Reverend Laura Brandis, who, as some of you know, had a major death in the family this week. And so I am with you today for that reason. So I'll say more about that later when we get to the joys and sorrows. So today and the days to come, let us hold her and her family in our hearts and in our prayers and hold them close. And so with this in mind, we gather here this morning to worship on this beautiful, clear morning. So our call to worship today is from the Reverend Scott Taylor. You can remove it now, that mask handed to you by the world. You can stop repeating, I'm fine, when all your heart wants to say is, I hurt. You can forget those hoops, let someone else jump through them for a change. Here, the striving can stop. The pretending can be put away. Here, just for a moment, let us be real. Come, let us worship. Our first reading this morning is from Mark Nepo, The Ever-Present Riddle of Being Who We Are. I keep returning to the ever-present riddle that being who we are is the necessary adventure. It unlocks everything, not because our self is so important, but because our essential nature that our self carries is the immediate doorway to everything that is life-sustaining. We learn early on that being who we are means fending off unwanted influence without cutting ourselves off from the chance to learn from others. Regardless of the culture we are born into, it isn't long after we arrive that everyone starts pointing and telling us where we need to be and what we need to do to get there. There's no time to really ask why. Soon things happen and we are thrown off course, and now there's all this effort to win their approval, no matter who they are. If lucky, love will distract us more than suffering. If blessed, we are broken of everyone's plans and regrets and thrown like a hooded bird into a sea of light. In trusting the fall, we find our wings. And now let us join together in a time of prayer, meditation, and silence. Holy One, ground of being, whose first language is silence. We come together this morning with heavy hearts, as death has once more come to this community. Any community has death and illness and also birth and celebration in abundance. In this time, may our hearts be full of love, of compassion, of empathy. May we reach out to comfort one another, to comfort those in need, and to ask for the comfort that we may need. And in the days ahead, may we hold close those whom we love, and may those that we love ever expand. And let us now be together in silent prayer, meditation in this moment.
Our second reading comes from Adrienne Mary Brown, Radical Honesty. We begin learning to lie in intimate relationships at a very early age. Lie about the food your mother made to avoid punishment, even as you swallow your tears. Or about loving the Valentine's gift, about the love you want and how you feel. We also learn that love is a limited resource and that the love we want and need is too much, that we are too much. We learn to shrink, to lie about the whole love we need, settling with not quite good enough in order to not be alone. We have to engage in an intentional practice of honesty to counter this socialization. We need radical honesty, learning to speak from our root systems about how we feel and what we want. Speak our needs and listen to others' needs. The result of this kind of speech is that our lives begin to align with our longings, and our lives become a building block for authentic community, and ultimately a society that is built around a true need and real people.
So as we heard in our second reading just now, we are taught to limit ourselves. We are often taught to be someone we are not in order to pass, to blend in, to not cause trouble, or to minimize humiliation or prejudice. We lie to save face or to protect another's feelings at the expense of our own. We minimize our needs, our wants, our feelings. And from there, we are split. Our insides do not match our outsides. Our self-image, what we feel inside, does not match our behavior. We self-medicate or self-distract to ease the pain, the embarrassment, the shame, the guilt, the loneliness of that split. And so we limit ourselves so that we never fully express our sadness or our joy and everything in between. As we heard again in the reading, we think ourselves too much, or more accurately, we think someone else will think we are too much. Every time I see a movie scene or something on the news where someone is just wailing or sobbing or raw anger or rage, I start to get uncomfortable just experiencing that raw emotion. I am, and I dare say many of us are, just not used to seeing that kind of emotion these days. It's been socialized out of us. Sometimes directly through parents and families, sometimes more subtly by movies and TV and our culture in general. And it goes the other way, too. I caught myself a few years ago shushing my son because he was laughing too much and too loudly in a movie theater. I tried to quickly take it back, but luckily he never listens to me with stuff like that anyway. He's not quite so split off just yet. And so for me, it boils down to, can we be vulnerable? It is difficult. It is scary. That's why Brené Brown often uses words like courage and daring to describe being vulnerable. Can we dare to bring our empty pot to the emperor? I have learned, or maybe it is hardwired in me, to be the stoic, the even-tempered one, the one who is in control and needs nothing from anyone. But as Dr. Brown states, there is strength in vulnerability because it comes from our deepest place, our truest place, and that is a place of power and a place of love. And so how do we get to that place? How do we start to put ourselves back together? One path is radical honesty, as we heard in our reading. I see it on at least two different levels. Honesty with ourselves, also known as integrity, and honesty with others, with those around you. As usual, the best place to start is within ourselves. We take stock, we take inventory of what is going on inside us. What are our values, our wants, our needs? What are the feelings that we are feeling? Not always easy work, of course. This forces us to see our light and to see our shadow. Hey, I'm pretty good at this thing over here. Maybe not so great at that thing over there. I have a lot of patience or joy or generosity. I also have fear and anger and loneliness within me. And it comes out in these situations. I cry at movies. I dance to every Wham song I've ever heard. I love sad, sappy songs from the 70s. I hurt when I fail. I feel shame when I hurt someone else. I don't always see my privilege, my bias. Turns out I'm not as welcoming to the other as I thought. I don't let my spouse, my coworker, my parent, my child ever see the real me. Whatever it is that makes me, me, and makes you, you. That is the work, to see it, to shine a light on it, to own it, to be real. That's radical honesty. And once we see it, we can celebrate what needs celebrating. We can get better at what we may need to get better. And for some of us, being honest with our light is the hard part. For some, with our shadow. If it is our light, it often comes down to fear, the shadow side of that light. Fear of success, fear of using our strengths and talents to their full potential, taking them to the places that you may not want to go. If it is your shadow, maybe it is still fear. Fear of letting that shadow out. Fear of embarrassment or shame if they only knew the real you. Whatever it is for you, for us, integrating our light and our shadow is the work of radical honesty. It is in facing these conflicts and contradictions and the wounds within us that we grow and mature. Without it, we perpetuate those wounds, often without ever realizing it. So once you start down that road of radical honesty within yourself, you eventually start seeing others in a new light as well. You see them just as complicated and weird and hurting and joyful as you are. Maybe they aren't quite as scary anymore. You're down off your pedestal, and they are down off of theirs as well. It becomes easier, maybe still difficult, especially at first, but easier to share yourself with that spouse, that coworker, that family member, even a stranger. That lonely self that you thought needed protecting from fear or protecting with anger, or so your loneliness or your embarrassment or shame would not grow, maybe it's not quite so fragile anymore. You are more integrated, more whole. Therefore, you can ask for what you want and what you need. First, because you actually know what it is that you want and need. And second, because in your increased wholeness, you can be vulnerable with that other person now. Soon, your compassion, your empathy grows. You not only want to meet your needs, but the needs of others around you. You even have more capacity for others than you thought you ever had before. And in fact, the space between you and that person next to you has shrunk. What before was a vast chasm now seems like no more than a step. And finally, our insides start to align with our outsides. And once our lives begin to align with our longings and the world's longings, then, as Adrienne Marie Brown says, then our lives become a building block for authentic community and ultimately a society that is built around true need and real people. And so how do we start down that road of radical honesty? We can't just flip a switch and decide, oh, I'm whole and authentic now. And it doesn't happen just once and for all time. And so this is where silence and contemplation comes in. Some of you know that I'm leading a spiritual retreat this Saturday here at church, full of spiritual practices. So you knew I was going to get there at some point. Silence and contemplation. We start down that road with practice, practice, practice. Finding and developing a spiritual practice where silence is the ground of being is the key to the spiritual journey of radical honesty or any other intention. And it's not just silence as in the absence of outer noise, because there are many practices that involve words or music or sounds of one kind or another. But I'm talking about the silence that is God's first language. Silence that is spaciousness, freedom, vastness, nothingness, formlessness, whatever word or metaphor works for you. When we take the time to rest in and seek out this silence, we see ourselves more clearly. We turn down, not necessarily turning off altogether, the noise of our lives, all the noise that described earlier, that our heads are filled with constantly. And in that silence, we hear the sound of our own heartbeats, maybe for the first time ever. When we first dive into that silence, it is again fraught with danger. Our minds, our egos do not like to be turned down at all. They will fight back. And this is why we practice over and over in big ways and in small. Even 1 minute of stillness and silence can begin to shift the balance. But even through fear of facing our true selves, remember that you are already loved, are already forgiven. There is a reason Jesus and the prophets and the other representatives of God in the Bible often begin by saying some form of, "Do not be afraid, fear not." So come on in, the water's fine. That is faith, that is surrender, knowing that the practice will bear fruit at some point, in some way. We only have to be open to the mystery that is in the silence and the mystery that is within us. These fruits can be seen as generosity, patience, awe, and wonder, compassion, and putting all that together as love. The ways we have to practice here at Horizon are many. We have Soul Matters and all the other small groups where we can share our part of the inward and outward journey and listen others into speaking their journeys as well. We have the retreat coming up this weekend where we will try out some practices for a day and sit with silence intentionally. We have worship and singing and music where we invite the presence of the divine and the mystery into our midst. And as you see more clearly in the silence, your true self emerges. Your Buddha nature, your Christ nature, the spark of the divine that is within you and within all of us. Then we start to live into the answers for that ever-present riddle of being who we are. And as Franciscan priest and spiritual director Richard Rohr says, when you get your who am I questions right, all of your what should I do questions tend to take care of themselves. And we have you covered there too here at Horizon. We have Faith in Texas. We have volunteering with MetroCrest. We have the community garden right out here. We have You, the Vote starting in this sanctuary just this afternoon. And soon we have the Green Sanctuary process beginning. All sorts of ways to get involved and to find your action. Finding your true self and finding the right action that emerges from that self. And so as we embark on this new year and this new decade, let us discover our true selves through radical honesty and through practice, practice, practice. Let us surrender to that true self, allowing it to guide us in spite of our trepidation or anything else that might seek to limit us and hold us back. Let us be too much. Let us get into good trouble. And above all, may we be real people with stories and lives and love to share. And may the resulting beloved community that grows out of that love shine within us and among us now and forever. So may it be, and amen.